Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this session on competition law and e-commerce. On the panel today, we have Mr. Zameer Nathani. He is the Senior Vice President and General Counsel of UFO Movies. Mr. Nathani was earlier the head legal at Balaji Telephones Limited and also the head legal at Balaji Motion Pictures Limited, which is a subsidiary of Balaji Telephones. He was there before that the director legal at Raymond Limited and a professor at the University of Mumbai. Welcome, Zameer, and thank you for taking out the time today.
Thank you very much.
The next we have on the panel is Mr. Shashank Jain. He is the head legal of Tata SIA Airlines Limited, which is Vistara. Mr. Jain started his career at Juriscorp and later did his LLM in 2010 from the George Washington University. After a stint at AZP and Partners, he joined Trilegal as a senior associate in December 2013 and was promoted to counsel in October 2015. Welcome, Shashank, and thank you for taking out the time today.
Thank you, Shreya.
Next, we have Gautam Shahi. He is currently a partner of regulatory and competition law at Dua Associates. Gautam specializes in regulatory and competition law. He has extensive experience in formulating legal strategies and prosecuting and defending clients before various regulatory and legal forums like the CCI, the NCLAT, the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, and the like. He also practices regularly before the High Courts and the Supreme Court of India. Welcome, Gautam.
Thanks, Shreya.
And last but not the least, we have Dr. Rahul Singh. He's an associate professor at NLSIO Bengaluru. Rahul teaches competition law and policy, regulation, WTO, and jurisprudence. He's also lectured as a visiting professor at numerous other universities, including University of California at Berkeley, University of Florida Levin College of Law at USA, Harvard University, Deakin University, and IIM Bangalore. He's also a member of the CCI's Advisory Committee on Regulation. His law review articles on competition law are widely available and have been cited by the Chief Justice of the Australian Apex Court as well. Thank you so much, Rahul, for taking out the time today.
Thank you.
All right, so before we dive in, I'll just have a brief introduction about what this panel is about. In 2020 January, the Competition Commission of India released a market study. This market study was on the impact or the possible anti-competitive efforts and trends by the e-commerce websites in India. The market study took into account various comments from all the stakeholders that are there in that ecosystem. And in 2020, this study was released in January. So before we dive in, I'd just like to invite Rahul to perhaps give us a brief idea of what this study is about.
Well, I mean, looks like e-commerce as a sector is in some kind of a spotlight all over the world. We must put this in a context because, what is happening with the Indian competition law space. By and large, it looks like as a society, we are okay being a follower jurisdiction. Like the Competition Commission of India's study has a backdrop, which is all around the world, in particular in the US, the UK, as well as the EU. They're trying to look at this idea of digital economy and what are the competition issues in the digital economy. In that kind of a background, the Indian Competition Commission as well decided to dive deeper, try to look at the e-commerce as a sector. As I'm sure many of the attendees know, we have actually only 6 attendees, but I'm sure many of them know that the developments in digital economy are not confined to the Indian Competition Commission. There are in parallel developments happening at the ministries as well. In particular, the Ministry of Commerce, I think, seems to be very interested in this particular area. Insofar as the CCI study report is concerned, though, having said all of that as a background, there are 2 or 3 points which I suppose which needs to be noted. And the first point is that, the question, I mean, more of a question rather than a point, is digital economy different from, let's say, a physical brick and mortar economy, right? that's the first point, I suppose, which comes across or maybe jumps at all of us from this report that we read at the CCI. What follows from there, and the next two questions sort of indicates the implicit assumption that the Competition Commission does look at the digital economy as somehow distinct from brick and mortar. Like the next two questions are, for instance, the entities which are active in this space, somehow do they have this ability to engage in self-preferencing? And that idea of self-preferencing goes by different names, by the way. It could mean, let's say, for instance, most favored nation clause in a kind of a, it's, we have Shashank from Tata SIA, right? So in the travel segment, for instance, it could indicate, well, when these travel agents, or even let's say Vistara on its own website, does it have an ability to engage into some kind of a self-preference? Right? We also have Zamir, who is looking at this movie segment, and similarly, in the movie segment, distributors, are there large distributors which will have this ability to engage in self-preferencing? I suppose, maybe in modern day context, it might not be appropriate, or today's context, it might not be appropriate to speak of Book My Show. But let's say Netflix, for instance, will that have an ability to engage in self-preferencing? So I'm, of course, deliberately picking and choosing based on the panelists that we have. But, that's the question which sort of implicitly assumes that in a digital economy segment, there is this ability to self-preference, right? The second question, which I'll touch upon before I hand over to other panelists, is that, what follows from here and this implicit assumption that digital economy somehow is different or distinct. So some bit of law and economics is utilized in order to draw the attention of the audience towards digital economy being different or distinct, right? What is that law and economics assumption? One of that goes by the name of what is called network effect, right? Very simply, all it means is the larger network you have, somehow, you are in a better sort of a shape vis-a-vis the consumers. Also, what follows from a network effect is that, well, you have this ability in this kind of a context that if you are the winner, like if you're the largest player, then you have this ability to fetch some rewards from your leadership position, which might be disproportionate compared to other sectors. So there are only three things that I said. One was that I said the context that it comes from jurisdictions abroad, US, EU, UK, and all. The other points which I have made is that there seems to be an implicit assumption that this sector is somehow distinct from other segments. And in that kind of assumption, two things stand out. One is this idea of self-preferencing, and the second one on network effect. Let me take a pause over there and maybe hand over to Shreya, back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Rahul. So just for the benefit of our audience who may not be as aware of what the market study is about, I'm just going to briefly run through it. It looks at a lot of things and a lot of behavior by the e-commerce platforms, including their very own private labels, selling products that are top sellers on these platforms, preferring certain sellers over others, having unfair terms for certain sellers, having price parity clauses, which to say that if you sell on my platform, you cannot sell at a lower cost or at more preferential terms at your own website or any other website. Mandatory bundling. Sometimes there are exclusive agreements. There's also deep discounting, which you can see in flash sales. And there are also a lot of other things that happen on more of the technological side, which is where they maneuver and manipulate the search results that show up for you. And under that context is everything that Rahul has spoken about. So now I'm going to take it over to perhaps Gautam and try to understand from Gautam that the study came out in January 2020. And after that, everything has changed because in March 2020, we were hit by the pandemic and suddenly the scales have been tipped in the favor of e-commerce platforms even more. So what is your take on that? Gautam, I believe you're on mute.
I'm sorry. So look, taking it forward from what Rahul said, that whether e-commerce is different from the traditional markets. It is different in the way it is prosecuted, but I think the first principles of competition law are still applicable. Now, yes, the scales have tilted in favor of e-commerce because of the recent tragedy that has been happening across the world. People are going online, people are shopping more online. Uh, that's happening, but you also see a reaction where competition authorities across the world are also looking at these e-commerce entities more closely. You see an increase in the number of proceedings that have been initiated against these entities. Uh, so yes, there is a urgency, there's a sense of urgency across competition authorities that here is a sector that needs to be looked at. Not only competition authorities, I'll say if you look at the presidential order of President Biden in US, even he has even that order mentioned that e-commerce is a sector that needs to be looked at closely. And effectively, he has asked his regulators to go and look closely at the conduct of these e-commerce entities. As far as the conduct is concerned, like you mentioned, deep discounts is one of the issues. There is also and deep discounts was mentioned in the case against Amazon and Flipkart as well by CCI. Then you have provincial listing, you have exclusive tie-ups and private labels. Apart from that, I wanted to mention this issue of big data and big analytics, which was again picked up by CCI in case of Google, where they recognize that this is a concern in the market. There is this problem that big data and big analytics is such a expensive proposition that only the big entities have access to these technologies, and they will act as an entry barrier for new players who want to enter the market. Of course, Shashank would talk about algorithmic collusion and algorithm-based price discrimination. And lastly, of course, there is a very interesting study that came out in UK by Competition Market Study, which talked about the manipulation of choice architecture, that these e-commerce entities can manipulate the way you go and pick up your product. They only project to you products that they want you to buy, instead of you having access to the entire market or different options that are available to you as a buyer. So yes, to summarize, e-commerce has an upper hand in the new world, the new normal, as we say it. There is a sense of urgency, and competition authorities across the world are looking at the conduct of e-commerce markets, and we'll have to see how this whole regulatory regime on e-commerce emerges in the near future.
All right. Thank you so much, Gautam. Since you've picked up on this particular topic of how algorithms can be maneuvered and, to change what you see at the eventual end of it, I'm going to hand this over to Shashank once, because he works in the airlines industry. And there has been a case in the past where CCI picked up on this issue with them, where they spoke about how they were using algorithms to price better or price in a way that would potentially be anti-competitive. So Shashank, could you perhaps walk us through that case? Talk to us why CCI thought it was worth investigating, and then why eventually and for which reasons CCI found that it was not anti-competitive at all.
Sure, I'll just walk you through, and I think it's probably more about understanding how fares are sort of decided by the airlines and what it is. So it's basically to do with dynamic fares, and by dynamic fares I mean that customers, the fares keep on changing on the basis of demand and supply. Now, in a digital economy and in a digital space, how would you do that? It's basically dependent on the web search and the web engines which are there. So whenever you put in a search, or people have bought tickets, there is inventory of tickets that is available with platforms specifically for airlines and softwares that are there, such as Amadeus, Galileo, and the like. So they sort of and whenever anyone is searching an itinerary, it sort of gets fitted into that, and then the airline, and the data goes to the airline. It pings the system of the airline, and the airline gives a fare. In this particular context, CCI had thought that there was some kind of price fixing that's going on, because what would happen, that fares of all airlines would go up together, or they would come down together. Now, the reason, and for doing this, what the airlines usually adopt, to fix and determine fares, is something known as screen scraping. So they would do screen scraping of data that was available, and they would sort of use that to determine what the fare should be. Now, when the CCI investigated this, they realized that the data that the airlines are using to determine what the fare is or what the fare should be was actually not current data, it was historical data. So the data was not of that particular day or of that minute. It was a historical data which was a day or two old, and that's what was being used. And on top of it, it was not that that data was available only to one airline or to certain airlines who subscribe to that service, but it was available to all airlines. So therefore, they were of the view that it's not anti-competitive. So that's what the investigation was about in a nutshell. The algorithm which was there was using historical data to give the fares. So it was not on current data or anything, and it was available to all the airlines. So for those two reasons primarily, CCI did not, um, for this investigation, found that the airlines were acting in an anti-competitive manner. Also, since Gautam and Rahul both touched on competition law perspective, that how things are different and there are customers see what they want to see. So there's a certain and a very important aspect which I think should be examined along with competition law. And you all being experts in competition law can maybe think about it. But just as a thought, there's a lot of this is dependent on personal information that you and I share. Whenever we click on accept cookies, we are sharing certain information, with these portals, with Google or any search engine, or with Facebook or with Instagram or whatever. Or like on Facebook, you see for Condé Nast some article, and you want to read it. The minute you click on that article, you're sharing cookies, so you're sharing your personal information. So, and there is certain regulation around personal information also. So I think competition law should be in context of e-commerce, needs to be read along with um, personal data protection laws such as the EU GDPR or the California data protection laws, and looked at it in a holistic sort of manner. Thank you, Shreya.
So thank you so much, Shashank. I will pick up the point about how the personal data protection ties in with competition law, and particularly in the context of e-commerce platform a little later. But right now I'm going to come to Zamir. And Zamir, there has been an echo of the fact that, digital economy is clearly different from the traditional economy. So what are your thoughts on that? And do you think competition regulations are sufficient and comprehensive to tackle the digital economy?
Yeah, so the discussion which came up before the CCI and overall in the context of this digital companies which were coming up was, if you see the facts of the case in India, India lacks specific regulatory bodies such as data protection regulatory body or e-commerce regulatory body. All right. So, which is a fact which is existing today, and therefore we are also trying to fix up e-commerce on the consumer part of it. Now, that is why it can be observed that CCI has simply taken the role in absence to commit jurisdictional overreach without an immediate ramification. This is how we put it across to it. Now, such an intention to step into the shoes of a special regulator was evident from CCI's response to WhatsApp preliminary objection of challenging CCI's jurisdiction also, relying on the landmark case of Honorable Supreme Court in CCI versus Bharti Airtel 2019. And the Supreme Court, for the purpose of maintaining that committee between the regulator, has also gone ahead and stated that CCI will essentially have a follow-on jurisdiction to a sectoral regulator who will first exercise primary jurisdiction to address technical issues related to a case. All right. Now, for that particular reason, when the FDI issue also came up, of course, ED has got into that zone at a later stage. But we can't distinguish India only as taking this particular step. India is not the only antitrust regulator which is inquiring into Amazon's market conduct. It is also European Commission which has initiated a probe against Amazon in 2019 for use of competitive sensitive data of sellers and its potential misuse. Interestingly, there is also development in United States. And if you see, the United States House bill is now seeking to break up Amazon and all the big tech companies. They are now trying to announce a bill which will be one of the biggest congressional broadside, that a handful of technology companies like Alphabet, that is Google, Apple, Facebook, whose size and power is drawn growing scrutiny from lawmakers. Uh, the law which they are planning to bring about is Ending Platform Monopolies Act, which seeks to require a structural separation of Amazon and other big technology companies to break up their businesses. Similarly, in the European Union, or the European Commission has published a proposal that we should have a Digital Services Act and a Digital Markets Act, which would implement far-reaching regulations to remedy the market power of this data-rich superstar firms like Amazon, Google, Facebook, and Apple. So in US, they call it FANG, Facebook, etc. In European Union, they say it GAFA, which is Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon. Now, these regulations explicitly refer to the big data as a source of market power and propose rules that would prevent these firms from making use of the data resources in specific competitive situation. And in addition to that, data sharing obligations would require firms to provide access their data resources in order to spur innovations and improve market transparency also. So it's trying to balance. So these development, what we are seeing today for CCI in India, is simply also reciprocated by EC in Europe, by FTC is in United States, and it's going across. So the concern comes out to be on a larger picture. Now, CCI also has refuted the preliminary objection in this case, in the case of WhatsApp, by simply stating that there is no other sectoral regulator that is actually seized of the matter. But nevertheless, in a situation where the proposed PDP bill or the e-commerce law is enacted by the central government, such a course of action by CCI can be challenged before the court for lack of jurisdiction. But at the moment, if you see, the overall issue is that in the current scenario, it is safe to say that wherever there is an anti-competitive activity, CCI is going ahead and exercising an innate and overreaching jurisdiction. That's my humble submission.
Thank you so much, Zameer. I'm actually going to come back to Rahul to understand, what has been the trend by CCI, because there have also been two other cases where CCI spoke about anti-competitive actions by various e-commerce platforms, including the Delhi Vyapar Mahasangh and the All India Vendor and Flipkart cases. So Rahul, could you perhaps walk us through those very cases? And then in the stride of it, help us better understand, where do you think CCI is going, and do you think there is actually jurisdictional overreach?
Okay, so you are looking for one particular trend, and let me begin by suggesting that there are two distinct trends here, and there isn't really one trend. The two distinct trends, to my mind, stem from two different areas that the CCI itself is looking at, right? And when I suggest areas, I only mean, see, Competition Commission has two distinct roles, right? In the merger control context, it's looking at these transactions ex ante, and it's trying to review these transactions. Think, for an example, the Reliance and Reliance and this Future deal, not the Flipkart deal. So Reliance and Future deal, which, I suppose it's in news because of all the Supreme Court decision, but I'm sure many of you might have also seen that Competition Commission has reopened that, Amazon's investment in Future and trying to see whether there was any particular mistake that was made, right? And therefore, I would want to make a distinction between CCI's approach when it comes to its merger control hat, which is more ex ante, trying to review the transactions, vis-a-vis CCI cases which are conduct related. I think some cases have already been touched upon. I think in particular, Shashank mentioned about the algorithmic collusion case, and that's something which emanates from a conduct related domain. So broadly, let me make the distinction upfront and say that there are two distinct trends. Right? In the merger control context, it looks like CCI is okay with the idea of being relatively pro transactions, pro investments, because when Facebook invests in Jio, then Google also invests in Jio. They are okay giving these approvals, and not just okay giving the approval probably in record time, 14 days or so, which is unheard of in other transactions. So it does seem like they are trying to think about perhaps ease of doing business, and therefore they're thinking that when it comes to merger control context, they seem to be pretty pro market, pro investment, pro FDI and everything else, right? Now this trend sort of changes the moment we look at these conduct related cases, because why is it that we are suggesting that the trend possibly changes is because it seems like CCI is okay initiating these cases, right? So let's actually make that clear. That I mean, all of these cases that we are thinking about, let's say Zamir also touched upon this WhatsApp case and on, they're all at very preliminary stage, right? Except for that very old 2017 Google case, CCI hasn't really gone ahead and imposed a penalty on any of the tech companies. Maybe one reason why they haven't done it because they don't have yet an idea or inkling as to what is US going to do, what is US courts going to do in particular, because FTC does not have the Federal Trade Commission, that is the US arm. I mean, it's not really an equivalent because FTC doesn't have the power to impose those penalties. FTC can only initiate investigations, right? Of course, in the EU context, we do have some examples where, for instance, against Google, against Amazon as well, they have been fairly aggressive. But let's also keep one thing in mind. There is some kind of a political element amidst all this antitrust, right? All of these so-called, whether you favor a FANG term or a GAFA term, they're by and large seen as American entities, right? And Europeans, of course, have a bone to pick when they're looking at these American entities. I only wonder because, since I made a point or made a claim that there are two distinct trends, even within Indian context. One is the merger control trend, which seems to be pro FDI and investment. But when it comes to conduct cases, CCI is certainly not shy of initiating these investigations. But I'm not sure how far will they take it when it comes to looking at penalties. Will they go the EU way or will they look at US as an example? Too early to tell, but let me actually just pause there with a summarization that the trend is essentially twofold. The merger control trend, to my mind, seems fairly distinct from the conduct related cases.
Thank you so much, Rahul. I'm going to now pick this up with Gautam. Gautam, as an e-commerce entity or as an e-commerce platform, what kind of things should one be careful about, given that this is how CCI has been reacting to the conduct by e-commerce platforms so far?
I'll come to that, but there's something that I remembered when Rahul was talking about the political perspective, political issues in the enforcement of antitrust in India. And I remember talking to Amazon people when Walmart was buying out Flipkart, and they were very happy about it. I said, what makes you so happy? And they said, till now we felt that Indian authorities were giving a preferential treatment to Flipkart because it's a domestic player. Now we both are foreign players, we'll both be treated equally. So yes, I believe at least the firms in India do feel that there is a element of political inclination in the enforcement of competition laws and other laws as well. Now, how should we be careful as an e-commerce entity? That's a very tricky question because it's a new market, and like I said, even though the first principles are applicable, but the conduct is very different. The way business is being done is very different. It's still evolving. The kind of discount schemes which are coming up, the way consumer is shown products, the way consumer buys products, the way he returns the products. These are all new methods of doing business in a market. What should we be careful of? I believe as long as you're a new player in the market with a very small market share, competition law gives you the freedom to experiment with the way you conduct your business. They shouldn't be concerned. However, the big players at least need to be much more careful in what they do. There needs to be a deeper assessment of what will be the impact on market arising from the conduct that they indulge in. If they are coming up with new business strategies, there should be an assessment, close assessment of what they're going to do and what will be the impact on the market, or even how competition authorities will perceive that particular conduct. So they need to be very careful with the way they are approaching the market, the way they are innovating in the market, and yes, they cannot be, I can't say that these are the 5 rules that you must follow. My only advice would be that any new strategy, please have a close look at what you are doing, have a legal assessment, and then go ahead with it.
All right. Thank you so much, Gautam. I'm actually now going to go to industry stakeholders, which is Shashank, and try to understand better from him what has changed in the last few years. And particularly also, Shashank, if you could perhaps talk to us about what do you think the government is trying to achieve? Because there's clearly a lot of interplay between what the regulatory authority, CCI, is doing and what other ministries are doing, including the e-commerce rules, which has a very, very big interplay with what e-commerce platforms do. And also, as you correctly pinpointed, what about the Data Protection Act?
Sure. So I'll just keep my response brief, and I think the government's agenda, in my personal view, and this is not the view of my company, but just my personal observation, is not exactly to break monopolies or to do any of that. They just want to regulate these entities because they seem that it's just politically right that they should be regulating that, and they're just using all of the regulators and pulling all of these levers in different ways to sort of regulate it. And to start off with, they are sort of projecting the regulation, at least of the likes of Amazon and these big apps, to protect mom and pop stores and all of that. But they're just sort of forgetting the larger point, that they are not necessarily targeting those stores and those particular people. Certainly the market is common, but at the end of the day, it's the consumer who is benefiting with lower prices and a larger variety, to go back to uh, convenience of easy return of products, which is something which has not been there. That's one way they have sort of projected it to the public. The second sort of largest theme they're playing, that we are trying to promote Indian uh, products and Indian applications and Indian software companies who want to come up and who want to do this business and provide them some kind of a level playing field and a start. But in that particular case, at least it's having having an unintended effect, where it's almost threatening from those kind of platforms to take off in a big way. So, for example, one of our group companies, Tata Digital, it's in public domain. They are and Adani as well, and Reliance as well. They've been up in arms against the kind of regulation that they are proposing, because it would effectively mean that they'll not be able to sell anything. So, for example, for a company, a group, a huge group like Tata, which makes salt, which is in the aviation field as I am in, and is selling, for example, Starbucks coffee and 8 o'clock coffee and tea and anything and everything, whatever we need as consumers, they will not be able to sell their products on their own digital website, because they are just trying to control the likes of Cloudtail, through which Amazon, they think Amazon has flouted FDI norms and is not doing something that they had intended or thought that they would be doing. So it's I don't think that's certainly the right way to do, and it can't be a one size fit approach, and they need to examine each and every case and every situation more carefully, and not get into this into a rush, even if they want to do it, because it'll certainly have unintended consequences. Then coming to data privacy and protection. So for that, in the European Union context, at least not here in the Indian context, we don't have a very strong data protection statute to begin with. There's certainly one that's proposed. In the European Union, we have the European Union GDPR, and we have the California Data Protection Act for the US. Now, those particular statutes provide, and they have provisions which say that the data of the customer belongs to the customer itself, and the customer can request deletion of that data or porting of the data, and has complete control over that data. And that's the aim, effectively, of that kind of statute. And at the same time, the European Union, for example, has come up with a statute which I think one of the panelists had touched upon, which is the DMA, which has come, and I think DSA is the other one they're planning to come about. And that sort of says that, you have to share data freely between each other, or you are like they treat Amazon and Google as like what they call as the gatekeepers, and they are supposed, and they effectively have to act like a regulator, and have an obligation to share data with other people and others in a free manner, so that they have equal sort of access. Now, that is something that's in direct conflict, in my opinion, at least, with the data protection laws of European Union itself, which gives people complete control over their data, and they can get their data. They can request the likes of Amazon and Google to forget their data and their search history and everything. So I think it needs to be dealt with in a more holistic manner than how it's being done, because in a digital economy and in a digital space, things are, in my opinion, way more complicated um, than it is in a normal sort of market. So we can't have similar rules that apply, in my opinion, to brick and mortar, and to a traditional economy, in comparison to a new age economy that we are getting onto. So all of this needs to be looked into, and looked into in a more deeper manner, and evaluate these kind of conflicts. Thank you.
Thanks, Shashank. I just have one short follow-up question, which is to understand that in the last few years, has there been any substantial change in how all of the e-commerce platforms for ticketing function that you may have noticed?
No, so for us, it's not it's not very different, and the technology is generally what it was many years back. There are certain, because ticketing is ticketing, and there is not actually a lot of scope to change prices for an airline. So the technology has not really moved in that aspect. Where the technology has moved, and that's not related to ticketing, is something that is related to what we call as ancillaries in our business. So it could be, for example, certain kind of there is a birthday that you are celebrating and you need a cake on the flight, or for example a porter service, or for example a seat upgrade. So those are the kinds of areas where technology has evolved for airlines, but generally the technology for airlines is pretty much similar to what it was. And I would, if I could put it to be so, is more simpler than what the likes of Amazon and all use. It's just a lot simpler, and the focus has really switched to other aspects, non as such flying aspects, but to other look and feel kind of aspects, and the little creature comforts that come for a price for an airline. That's where the technology is moving for an airline.
All right, thank you so much, Shashank. I'm just going to now move back to Rahul to understand that in his time and interaction, what changes, technological changes, has he noticed on e-commerce platforms? And Rahul, to that extent, do you think CCI is actually accounting for it? Is it at the forefront to understand these technologies?
Yeah, I suppose there are two things which is quite different and distinct about the so-called digital economy context, right? One is possibly the scale, right? Because the number of people whom you can reach out to is certainly far wider than maybe brick and mortar. And I'm sure all of us, if we self-reflect in just this pandemic hit world, how much we have come to rely upon technology and how quickly, for instance, this webinar itself on WebEx, right? I'm not sure if, let's say 2 years ago, if there was this proposal that let's do a webinar, how many of the panelists here would have agreed saying that, yeah, we will turn up before a laptop or a device and do this webinar, right? So in that sense, the first point being the scale, right? The scale at which now you can do, because of course, potentially speaking, I suppose this webinar can reach the entire world. Of course, I do notice, by the way, that the number of attendees has remained really in single digits. Hopefully, it's only because everybody else has been watching us live on YouTube and has not really logged into WebEx. But that's meant as an aside and of course only in jest. Right? The second point, which I suppose can be made about the digital economy bit, is besides this idea of scale, is possibly scope. And I think here I'll touch upon what Shashank was mentioning. Let's say a conglomerate like Tata, right? Traditionally it was seen as what the pink newspapers in India call a salt to software entity, right? Tata Sons owning, or selling these products from salt to also Tata Consultancy Services software. And in between, of course, a lot of stuff used to be, right? Including airline and stuff. You can see that an entity like Tata has also now entered this field of digital, right? That Tata Digital is also acquiring other entities. It has stake in all sorts of things, including now in Big Basket, and all of this from public domain, of course, right? So because I also consult, and therefore I'm making it clear that all of this is, of course, from the public domain. And therefore you can see the scope of activities. Like, an entity like Tata's is entering newer and newer fields. And this is not to, of course, only suggest that Tatas are doing it. Every other entity as well is possibly increasing their scope. Like, let's touch upon one more aspect here as an example to indicate or emphasize or amplify the point related to scope. Let's say education as a sector, right? They talk about ed tech now, because you suddenly have all of these entities which are trying to reach out to several consumers of education, whom we otherwise call as students, by the way, but they are consumers of education only because there is scope to reach out to several people. And a third example I'll take over there is, let's say, something like fintech, financial technology, right? Now, just one instance, if you look at crypto investments in India in last 12 months, okay, it has gone up, guess how many times? 400 times. And this is something which is not even, legally recognized, because it's hard to figure out where exactly it fits. Is it legal? Is it illegal? It's not even recognized. 400 times last 12 months. And this is the data which comes out from people who gather this kind of data. So scale and scope is what I think stands out about technology and digital economy. And that's how I'll summarize it back and hand it over to you, Shreya.
All right, thank you so much, Rahul. I'm going to now hand it back to, I'm actually going to open the floor because I want to understand genuinely what you think is going to be the upcoming trends. And do you, I know, Rahul, your position's fairly clear on the conduct and the merger regimes, but I do want to understand from everybody else. And of course, Rahul, please jump in if you do want to add on to it or add some more color to that, as to where do you think this is going, and what do you think we can expect from the CCI in terms of just regulating e-commerce, and of course, how much of of like an interplay it will obviously have in terms of manifestation with the e-commerce rules. Should we start alphabetically? Then we can go with Gautam first. Gautam, would you like to take that?
Sure. See, there is, so there's already a realization with Competition Commission of India that e-commerce is a market that needs to be looked at. It's a very important market in terms of size and scope, and the conduct in the market is something that they need to look at. In the past, they have given a free hand to this sector. Even now, as Rahul said, that in the M&A space, CCI is being quite lenient, and that may be because of the history of the way M&A regulations were brought in and how they were notified in 2011. And a commitment, unofficial commitment being given by the competition authority that, look, we are going to be lenient with respect to M&As. So you see in the last 10 years or so, not a single transaction has been rejected by the Competition Commission of India. Certain amendments, yes, but no rejections. We'll have to see how, if that trend changes, specifically for e-commerce. I doubt if that will happen, because overall in Indian market, government wants to encourage investments. They want to encourage transactions. So I don't think CCI will change their approach with respect to M&A approval. As far as enforcement goes, I think they need to build up on their capacity to understand and appreciate this market. They have the requisite sorry. So in terms of enforcement, they need to build up their human capacity. They need human resources to better understand this market and to better approach in the ways they can modulate the conduct of the players in the market. And if required, wherever there's a requirement, to penalize the anti-competitive conduct. So yes, we'll see more aggressive approach of CCI on enforcement side. Are they going to be aggressive only with respect to changing the conduct, or are they also going to be aggressive in terms of the penalty being imposed? That's something that we need to look at. Maybe they, I would suggest that with respect to penalties, they need to be a little more lenient. But of course, by all means, there should be regulatory intervention to change the conduct wherever the result of the conduct is a harm to competition and consumers in the market.
Thank you so much, Gautam. Shashank, would you like to add something or digress?
I think what's important and what we need to think from a regulatory perspective, and regulator needs to think about probably, is like till now they have been regulating retrospectively. So for example, they sort of investigate when things have gone wrong, and then they start an investigation. I think from an e-commerce perspective, they should be thinking of having some kind of prospective regulation, because e-commerce as an industry is very, very fast and it grows very fast. So, doing some kind of retrospective regulation may not be always efficient and a good idea, because it's possible by the time they finish the investigation, the technology would have changed, or the business model would have changed, or something new would have come up, and it would have. So it would be better that if it is, in my opinion, that if it's something that's sort of self-serving and is like a guideline which is available to all of these platforms, and they can work around it. Obviously, if they don't adhere to it, there can be investigation and all of that. So it's more of like a prospective kind of a regulatory mechanism, instead of in having investigations being undertaken post facto. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Zamir, would you also like to weigh in, please?
I think it's gone one level above. So that's my prima facie. And I'll tell you, so I'll give you certain examples. Now, if you see this ongoing, and one of the most debatable example, it would be the CCI Suomoto probe on WhatsApp for its privacy policy, wherein the CCI passed a Suomoto order directing an investigation into WhatsApp for alleged breach of dominance under the Competition Act with respect to the new privacy policy. This was a deviation from the previous judgment in the Vinod Kumar Gupta versus WhatsApp, wherein the CCI had held that it will not dwell upon the privacy concerns as they fall under the purview of a different legislation dealing with information technology. But if you see in today's date, the CCI actually exhibited a significant shift in the perspective by acknowledging that privacy can also take a form of non-price competition in its market study of telecom sector, which was published in January. Further, CCI stated that unreasonable data collection and sharing could provide competitive advantage to dominant players, potentially resulting in abuse of dominance. So this is where we are on the first part of it. The second is that if you see the present case of WhatsApp to be in a dominant position in the relevant market of over-the-top messaging app through smartphones, previously it was observed in Harshita Chawla versus WhatsApp. CCI noted that users are not provided with appropriate granular or voluntary choice to object or rather opt out of the data sharing, unlike the 2016 WhatsApp privacy policy. It also observed that it was unfair and unreasonable condition for the user to accept the update to essentially conclude the contract and continue using the WhatsApp service. And therefore, CCI concluded that such a take or leave it policy would amount to abuse of dominant position and prima facie violation of Section 4.2 of the Competition Act, which refers to imposition of unfair terms and conditions. Exactly similar is the investigation and order of German cartel against Facebook for exploitative business terms with respect to the data collection and lack of choice to users, wherein Facebook acted in a similar manner that I am giving you a choice of to opt out. Now, Facebook was mandated to provide voluntary consent to users, which meant that the usage of their service should not be subject to their consent to share the data. Another example, what I can show you in a continuation is the CCI's probe in Amazon and Flipkart vertical agreements with sellers, wherein the Competition Commission of India was asked by the court whether it had jurisdiction to order an investigation into an alleged anti-competitive practice of e-commerce platforms like Flipkart and Amazon. Amazon had earlier contended that CCI was overstepping its jurisdiction by ordering a probe into the e-commerce giants, because the argument is that only Enforcement Directorate can look into violation of FDI, foreign direct investment policy, and not CCI. However, CCI cited previous Supreme Court judgments to argue that confidentiality only applies in case where trade secrets are involved. The court also asked the council whether the information on the basis of which the probe was ordered was also sufficient. Now, CCI in this case also argued very diligently and very smartly. CCI said the impunge order, being a prima facie order, is in the nature of an administrative direction to its investigative wing. All right. And this is in terms of the famous judgment of Supreme Court in CCI versus SAIL. So there is no harm to that. Number two, none of the parties have challenged the inherent jurisdiction of the commission. Number three, there is a specific absence of a specific regulator for e-commerce in India. None of the parties have challenged the bona fide of the impunge order. None of the parties have challenged the Wednesbury principle of unreasonableness. What is Wednesbury principle of unreasonableness? There can be two situations of unreasonableness. You may think one, I may think the other. And then CCI upped the ante by saying that Supreme Court has cautioned High Court against interfering with CCI's prima facie order under Section 26(1) in the Bharti Airtel judgment, so that they have the power to review it on its own merits. CCI also made a statement that after due analysis, they have found vertical arrangements in the nature of preferred sellers, preferential listing of such sellers on both Amazon and Flipkart in the context of violation of Section 3(4) of the Competition Act in the inter-platform, intra-platform, and inter-channel distribution. So the message is very clear that CCI, through its series of cases, what we saw, wherever they will find unfair privacy policy, predatory pricing, anti-competitive agreements, or any sort of priced or non-price competition of dominant entities, it now makes an analysis that there is a potential adversible effect on competition. Therefore, if you look at the present trend, the CCI is getting into the domain which would look beyond the scope, but from a CCI standpoint, it sees merit in evaluating the same because it's all subject to judicial scrutiny at a later stage on whether it was in the public interest and in the interest of competition. That's what I can sum up to the overall role and the level 1 to which CCI has now gone beyond it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sameer. So we actually will just move to audience questions, and we have two of them. One is particularly to Rahul. Rahul Rakshit Sharma has asked that in its July 2020 report on the framework for governance in respect of non-personal data, the ministry has characterized a dominant position as a per se violation of competition law. In light of this, how would you view loyalty programs such as Amazon Prime and their possible market foreclosure effects?
So, thank you very much for this question. There are two distinct aspects over here, right? One is if we are somebody who is so gung-ho about, let's say, this idea of so-called per se infringement of competition law, this takes us back to the MRTP Act 1969 regime, right? Where I don't know whether enough people know about it, so let me quickly summarize. MRTP Act 1969 used to have this concept called dominant undertaking, and they had a very simple formula for figuring out which entity is in dominant position. 25% of market share was the magic number. Now, if this is what MeitY is thinking, then I suppose, maybe they should take us a step ahead and say, let's repeal Competition Act 2002 and let's go back to MRTP Act 1969. That would be my first, of course, deliberately provocative suggestion. Now, building on from that, when you put this question, which is how does one view loyalty program? Here is what I'll suggest. It's not really MeitY's job to figure out who is in dominant position, right? Who is in dominant position? In terms of the statute, and I think Zamir has made this point several times, so let me touch upon this. I think he's looking at this idea of judicial review and judicial scrutiny in many of these instances that he is taking for our purposes, right? But if we take that sort of an argument to its logical conclusion, the only statute which does govern this idea of dominant position, unless you are talking about electricity sector, is the Competition Act 2002. And in terms of the Competition Act 2002, CCI, the Competition Commission of India, whether you like it or not, has a monopoly entitlement over figuring out whether somebody has abused their dominant position. So to that extent, I'll suggest that, maybe if MeitY has concerns, they should file an information at the Competition Commission of India, and let's see what is the kind of view that the CCI takes, because unless we have some kind of a view which emanates from the commission, it will be hard to say what is it that is causing some concern to MeitY. I'm not very sure as to why is it that they are so concerned about Amazon Prime. And let me leave it there because it looks like a bit of a premature idea, because unless the commission is taking this view, it's hard to really predict what could be an impact upon market foreclosure kind of effects, right? Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Rahul. The next question is open to the panel. Some companies claimed to have taken self-regulatory measures to avoid any potential violation of the Competition Act. Vivo recently stated that it will launch its products simultaneously on all channels, online as well as offline, and at the exact same price. So what's your take on self-regulation by these entities, and or a traditional independent regulator imposing rules are the way to go? Would somebody volunteer, please?
I can take up that if you want.
Please go.
So see, in my experience, when I dealt with our antitrust body, Competition Commission of India, I think so. We have been dealing with MRTP and then coming to this age of CCI, and virtually most of the matters are lying before the Supreme Court, and it's a seasoned thing which is happening now for last 10 years. I had many experiences with the companies where I worked. They're all in news in the public domain, whether it pertains to Raymond. We have a brand known as Kama Sutra. There was a cartel case which went on. It's in the public domain. With the government involvement, because there is also a program which government runs on these. I have seen in last 10 years CCI developing learnedly and knowledgeably a lot. If it forms as an anti-competitive agreement, if you get into a dominant position, if you form a cartel, CCI has good enough resources to cover and capture that. I can give you one of the examples that CCI visited companies as vendors to find out what is the total production which is happening. CCI was able to provide a mobile communication report to all the groups of the company's CEOs who were gathered together and ask them the question that whether now you admit for cartel or do not admit for cartel. So I think overall what I'm seeing, wherever there's a abuse of dominant position, wherever there is anti-competitive agreement, wherever there is cartel, CCI has adapted learnedly on that. And I think one should not shy away. I'm not getting in the news and the political part of it. But overall, these companies have a certain level to it. It's just the sanctity with which we are looking at. And as Rahul rightly pointed out, if CCI does not get into that domain of abuse of dominant position, like the sector regulator on data protection, one of the issues with the data protection law makers were facing is that you have checkmarked on every terms and conditions of the website saying that your data can be published anywhere in the world. You can't crib about Facebook and Cambridge Analytica because your global data is out. You go to Gurgaon, there are 5,000 companies which will have a copy of your PAN card and Aadhaar card, etc. How do you then bring a law in that situation and restrict those people who will say there is a contractual commitment by the customer previously? So I think from that context, I think CCI is an authority. They get into investigation. CCI is now getting into numbers. They become seasoned. I think sometimes it looks to be a tough evaluation, but I think if you go through that exercise, you come out clean in that. So that's my view about CCI regulation and overall context.
I thought the question was on the self-regulatory bit, right?
On the self-regulation part of it, like for example in Balaji Alt Balaji when it came out, and this OTT platforms which are there, I think so. The context which I was addressing is that unless and until you don't find that there is a like self-regulatory mechanism where there's a cartel or there is any abuse of dominant position by virtue of this, you will not be able to establish that the self-regulation mechanism is intended to abuse any dominating position. Like for example, the new formation of the OTT platforms coming together and forming a self-regulatory body recently, about 15 days back. Now, till you don't find features of a cartel in a self-regulatory mechanism, I have seen those days where copyright law was amended in 2012 for charging royalty, and now on the OTT level, there is a self-regulatory body which has been formed. Till you don't find that these self-regulatory mechanisms are by default forming a cartel and therefore abuse of dominant position, you will not be able to pursue it before the CCI. This is my point, my take on the self-regulatory mechanisms. Rahul, that answers that?
No, I thought that was the audience question. That's why I was only reminding. So, I mean, Shreya, I'll give my view as well on this self-regulatory bit. So I'll only say, as lawyers are supposed to like these Latin jargons, right? So I'll say it helps pro tanto to an extent, and I'll explain what does that mean. It helps to an extent. So to the extent that corporate entities are undertaking a competition compliance program, the recent case laws indicate that when it comes to penalty, the Competition Commission is okay giving some discount on the penalty because there was a commitment to either futuristically undertake competition compliance program, or sometimes even looking at the past. And I think Shashank was making this point, are there compliances which are happening in a retrospective manner or prospective? To the extent that CCI is looking at competition compliance program, it looks like they are okay giving some discount on monetary penalty so long as the company has undertaken some competition compliance program. Sometimes they have gone to the extent of saying even futuristically it might be okay for a discount. And that's why my answer that it's pro tanto. To an extent, it looks like self-regulatory might be okay from the CCI perspective. But it can't be really taken too far because of one simple reason that, I'm assuming audience also consists of mostly lawyers. I know panelists are all lawyers. But, look at the legal profession. Bar Council of India is the best example of a self-regulatory example. But is it really a best example of a regulator? Let me, pose that as a question again, very deliberately provocative to all of you, and leave that as a question for you to answer.
Thank you so much.
We would not call it a cartel, but Rahul, we would refrain it from calling a cartel, but.
Well, I don't want to say anything. What if I'm the CCI and I'm asked to look at this?
Yeah, we want to be less provocative.
Then you will quote this. Then you will quote this webinar and say you had already taken the view. So.
Okay. Yeah, Shreya.
All right. There's one last question for Rahul again. Should India contemplate introducing director disqualification regime, since once an entity is held to have contravened the act, it's the individuals as well who get penalized? And she's also of the opinion that fining system do not appear to be serving much of a purpose at the moment.
Right. So if I got your question correctly, because I think there's some parts I lost. The idea is to look at whether these individual penalties work or not, right? And let me, if I get this incorrectly as a question. You see, I mean, it's not necessarily true that in all contexts, the commission has initiated penalty against individuals. And somehow, in your question, there is an assumption that it's a superior mechanism. Just take a look at the most recent case from CCI. Just few days ago, the Maruti Suzuki India Limited, right? 200 crore of penalty, but only on the corporate entity. I'm sure you must have seen in the newspaper, even if you hadn't gotten a chance to read the case law as such. But there is not even a whisper in the case, by the way. Why is it that the Competition Commission, unlike other cases, decided in Maruti Suzuki not to initiate proceedings against individuals, whoever they might be? I mean, let's say the marketing officers. I'm not even saying they should have initiated proceedings against the director and the CEO, because the evidence, the case law is replete with evidence or related to emails which emanate from these marketing officers to dealers. So to that extent, it's clear that CCI is looking at marketing officers being somehow liable, but the commission does not initiate these individual proceedings against the marketing officers for penalties. So I'm not even sure that there is a coherent jurisprudence when it comes to Competition Commission initiating these proceedings. And therefore, when you say whether something is effective or not, it will be quite inchoate, I suppose, to suggest that this is effective at all.
Let me just add to it. If you see the trend, generally, CCI has gone after individuals only in cartel cases. They have avoided that in abuse of dominance cases, and even in cases of vertical restraint.
To that extent, Gautam, are you of the opinion that director disqualification is something that will be more effective?
It's effective in the sense that it discourages individuals from at the senior levels of the enterprise from allowing their entity in indulging into such kind of anti-competitive conduct. But there's a counter thought to it. The problem is, and this I've seen while implementing compliance programs, that sometimes while the management genuinely wants to stop this conduct, the lower level officers at the marketing team or in the sales team, they indulge in such kind of conduct. Now, what do you do in these cases? Under the applicable laws, you will have to go and penalize the senior management, even though they tried their best to stop such conduct. So it's a tricky question. Yes, it does have a has an effect of discouraging such conduct. But I think CCI needs to be a little more cautious with respect to how they impose penalty.
All right. Thank you so much, Gautam, and thank you everybody for taking out the time from your really busy schedules and being here. That's the end of the question. And thank you so much for all your thoughts on what the CCI trends are currently and what we can expect, what various stakeholders in the market need to be looking at, and for also discussing some very specific nitty-gritties of where and what the CCI is doing. Thank you so much. And unless Sudhanshu has something to add, I will just hand it over to him.
I think let me just thank you, Shreya, for doing a wonderful job of moderating this panel. And apart from that, I thank all the panelists for taking out time on a Saturday afternoon and spending some time on this very important issue of competition or interface with e-commerce. We hope that we have further discussions on these topics again. And we would like to thank on behalf of the Center for Corporate and Competition Law, Nalsar. And we hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thanks, Shreya.
Thank you.